Hi, this is Jordan Moorhead with the Moorhead team. Today we have Tim Swierczek here, and he's a lender that's going to talk to us all about the differences of Heloc versus refinance. Tim is a lender in Texas, Minnesota, and many other states, but he's also an investor. So he has a lot of experience figuring out what's the best for him, Heloc or refinance. And he's just going to talk about the pros and cons of both here today. Hey, Tim, how are you?
Hey, good, Jordan. Thanks for inviting me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I really wanted to have you on. I get this question all the time. Should I refinance my property and maybe pull some money out, or should I do a HELOC and have a line of credit set aside? So I just wanted to get your thoughts as a lender and an investor on what are the pros and cons of each so people can better understand what a HELOC is, why you should get it, and then what a refinance is and why you should get that.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. I think that, when someone asks me this question, I go right back to, well, I need more information, right?
Mhm.
Because there isn't number one, there is no set answer, right? Like if someone were to say like one is better than the other, that's incorrect as a generality.
Mhm.
But in certain situations, you could definitely say, hey, Jordan, for you, the best answer is a HELOC or the best answer is a refinance. So I would start with a couple questions. If it were me and I were looking at analyzing the situation, I want to know what are the terms of your current loan, right, Jordan? So like if your current loan is a high interest rate and it has private mortgage insurance or even FHA's mortgage insurance on it, those are factors that we'd have to consider on what should we redo your first mortgage, right? On the flip side, let's say your first mortgage rate is in the 2% range, like not exactly two, but 2.5, 2.75. The first digit starts with a two, and there's no mortgage insurance. Well, that's a completely different conversation when we're looking at analyzing this situation. The other things that someone would want to know is what is your plan for the money, right? If you have no plan now versus I have a property in mind, that's also different. And then how quickly will you use the money, which kind of goes a little bit into what is your overall plan for the money and how quickly will you pay it off, right? Those are factors. The one last factor I wrote down on my little tips when I was like thinking, what would I look at is what is your current loan to value and what would it be, right?
Mhm.
If you know all this information, you can start analyzing this a lot better. So a HELOC so let's go back to what makes a HELOC great. I love HELOCs. What makes a HELOC great is, in no particular order, I didn't write this down. So in no particular order, a HELOC is low closing costs, right? Which is nice because if you're going to spend $6,000 in closing costs on a new refinance, or you can get like a HELOC for let's say $1,000. So I'm making those numbers up, but that's not that far off, right?
Mhm.
Then that's $5,000 difference. That'll pay for a lot of interest, right? So even if the interest rate's a little bit higher, that'll cover a lot of little bit higher interest rate, So that's something you have to consider. Another great thing about a HELOC is basically a low interest credit card, right? And what's cool about a credit card? One of the things about a credit card that's cool is if you don't owe any money, you don't pay any interest. Same thing's true on a HELOC, right? So if you don't need the money right away, right? You in the future you're an investor and you're going to need to buy a property, but you don't have this property in mind, and it could be a year down the road. A HELOC is generally going to be a better product for you because you won't pay interest for a year. If you refinance with me and you take $100,000 out, you're going to pay interest on $100,000 for a year before you use it in that same situation, right? So HELOCs are great for that. They create an immense amount of flexibility and they're reusable, just like a credit card. One cool thing about a HELOC is you can overpay on it and not be fearful of overpaying, right? So, Jordan, you close some commission deals and you're in real estate and you get some big lump sum money and you don't need it. Rather than sticking it in your bank account, you can dump it all against your line of credit, reduce that interest that you are paying on that money, knowing full well, like, hey, I know I need this money 6 months from now. I have something planned, whatever that is. Don't store it in your checking account, store it right against your line of credit by paying it down, and then take the money back out when you need it again. You can't do that with a regular loan, right? So those are all really, really big advantages to a HELOC. HELOCs don't have many disadvantages really, but they have a couple. One of them is their rate is a little higher. And you've heard me say this before. I think that's overblown, right?
Mhm.
We're talking the difference, like, let's just say current rates because they do vary, but I'm going to simplify everything. Let's say current rates on a regular loan are 4% and on a HELOC it's 5%. you're only talking about a 1% difference, right? It's not a 5% interest rate. It's a 1% difference between what your other option is. And so that 1% on X amount of dollars, how much money does that work out to? That's what you're really analyzing, right? So if you're talking about $100,000, 1% over 1 year is $1,000, right? But if you don't pay interest on it for the first year or first 6 months, because it was a HELOC and you didn't need the money, then we're really only talking about $500. And if the closing costs were $5,000 less, the HELOC is financially better, even though the rate's higher, right? So the rate is not nearly as important as people think. HELOC rates are also variable. They will increase over time. We are at all-time lows, so you can fully expect that rate to go up. But again, I don't think that's a major factor, but it is something people should consider. If you're not going to pay off the HELOC quickly, over a long period of time, the HELOC interest rate will add up. If we're talking about a couple of years or paying it down and then reusing it, HELOC's a great loan tool.
Yeah, so I think a huge misconception with the HELOC versus a refinance is that, obviously everybody understands HELOC's the line of credit, home equity line of credit, pretty easy to understand. A refinance, I think in a lot of other people's heads, ends up being different than just a purchase loan. So could you explain, is it any different than a purchase loan? And it is another loan. Can you explain kind of what that looks like and what your LTV can look like on a refinance?
Sure. The process can be different. And like you said, the terms like the LTV can be different on a refinance versus a purchase, but the end product is identical. Meaning like if you get a purchase FHA loan, your refinance FHA loan is identical. If you get a with the exception of the loan to value, but I mean the actual, like, am I making the payments? Are they fixed? Is it 30 years? Is it, well, you know what I mean? They're all the same, right? You could tell no difference. Same with conventional versus conventional. Though, but they are different in that a refinance, depending on the loan product, will give you a lot lower loan to value than a purchase will. For example, you can get a purchase with 3.5% down on FHA. You can also then refinance that same loan FHA with only 3.5% equity. But if you want to refinance and like take cash out, now you're down to 80%. So instead of 3.5% equity, you have to have 20% equity.
Oh, wow.
And something would be very similar on a conventional, except conventional on, like, when you're talking multifamily, like duplexes and stuff, they're going to lower that even more, those numbers that I just gave you. So they're lower loan to value. So in theory, you can get a 5% down conventional through Freddie Mac on a duplex, but if you start looking to refinance that, you're on almost every loan program, you're looking at about 15%, even if you're living in it.
Sure. And I think that's important too. So I've done quite a few refinances, not with the intention to get money out, but to get out of those sweet owner occupied loans so I can go reuse them again. And people think, well, why would you refinance? I'm not refinancing because I want the cash. I'm refinancing so I have to bring less cash to the next purchase, because I don't necessarily need the cash right now, and I don't want to pay a higher payment to have a bigger loan, but I want to be able to use less down on the next loan.
Right, which is another way of generating cash, right? Like in some ways, like you can either save up money, you could take money out of a house, or you could find a way to be more efficient on your next purchase, all of which solve the same problem, right?
Yeah, it's just, and I think that's why I wanted to talk to you today and get this out there so people can better understand their options for refinancing or pulling cash out or getting equity out of a property without having to sell a property. Of course, we all know selling a property is going to give you the most money, but you don't have that property anymore. You're not making that cash flow. You're not making the appreciation. There's all the benefits of owning property you're not getting anymore. Yes, you can take 100% of that cash and put it to work somewhere else, but the first property is gone. So I really think this is a great learning experience for people to understand what a HELOC is, what that does, why you would use it, what a refinance is, why you would use that, and then other ways you can get out of loans to use low down payment loans again. So just to recap for everyone, HELOC is probably best if you don't have a property identified and you want to maybe reuse that money over and over. So I have a business partner who uses a HELOC to fund deals, and he will pay it off and then he'll pull out of it again, but he's not he doesn't have money out of that HELOC for any more than, let's say, 6 months.
Right. So I think on a rehab deal, like if you're rehabbing, again, that would be a great example of where a HELOC is going to be a very efficient tool. It's going to work very good. If you need $100,000 and you know that like it's down payment money and you're going to be getting cash flow, but it's a 10% return, that means inherently that means it's going to take 10 years for you to get that money back, right? If you're at a 10% return on a HELOC. So so under that situation, it might be better to use a full loan, right? Because you're going to have this money. It's $100,000, so it's a lot of money, and it's over a long period of time, right? And so I don't think that the HELOC's the only way, but I do think it's a tool that is underused. And what I tell a lot of people is sometimes you can hybrid it, right? If we know that you're going to have you've got $200,000 in equity, let's say that's tappable, and you know the vast majority of it, or 100,000 of it, you're gonna put it out there. You're buying a property and you're not paying that off anytime soon. Maybe because you know you need all 200,000, and you could maybe get 100,000 paid off quickly, but not 200,000. Well, then why not do a refinance? Take the first 100 in a fixed rate long-term product, and the second 100 in a HELOC variable product, right? There's no right answer, but for everybody, but there is probably a right or a more correct answer for whatever your situation is. And so like I've always offered you, whether I lend in one of your client states or not, I'm happy to talk through that with them. If they want to hit me up through you can give them my contact info and you can meet me on Zoom. I'd be happy to talk through it. But those are some of the things that people should consider. Also consider that like the HELOC might be the better way to pull cash out, but that doesn't mean if you have some bad terms on your current loan that you wouldn't refinance that, maybe take zero cash out, right? So, sure. Hey, I do this pretty frequently. Mortgage insurance is not overly expensive. I think it gets trashed, so I don't want to beat it up. But let's just say you have mortgage insurance that's $150 a month. Well, if your new HELOC payment is going to be $150 a month interest only, we could refinance your current loan, get rid of that mortgage insurance, and now your HELOC becomes essentially free, right? I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's free compared to what you were paying, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I think there's so many creative ways, and the more people can understand on how these things work and have a great resource like Tim here. Tim, what's the best way for people to reach out to you if they have questions?
Yeah, I mean, it's easier than my phone number is 651-772-9000. It's a lot easier than my name. Tim@timswierczek.com is my email, but 651-772-9000 is my phone number. You can text or call that. So that's probably the easiest one to write down and remember. And then we can, connect other ways too.
Awesome. And we'll put that in the notes here too, guys. All right. Thank you so much for coming on here today, Tim. And again, if anybody has any loan related questions, reach out to Tim, 651-772-9000. If he doesn't answer, he'll call you back.
Yep.